Hello, hello. Kobe? 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 Kobe, Kobe?
Yeah,
Can you just go on my page?
from my computer.
Yeah. Just see if it's working. Hi, Phyllis. How are you? Happy Hanukkah. Are you okay? Hi, Stephanie. Welcome. Happy Hanukkah and good Chodesh, actually. Yes, Rosh Chodesh Teves. It's my birthday month. I hope this is finished before my big birthday party. Yosef's birthday. Sarah Lydia, happy Hanukkah from Yerushalayim. I just looked at your beautiful menorah lit and looking over the skies of Jerusalem. How beautiful. Very, very special. Okay, we'll wait a few minutes. Let's just chat. Hanukkah 2020. Today I had a very unusual experience. We had a family Hanukkah Zoom call. Hi Miranda, thank you and happy Hanukkah. So we didn't have all the family. We tried to get a lot of the family on and it was really, really nice. It's the first time. Jill, hi. Happy Hanukkah. Gosh, every time I see everybody's names pop up, then I miss you. But it makes me so happy, kind of to see you. I feel you. Sarah, hi. Happy Hanukkah. We all must see each other really soon. I am going actually to start. I just want to stare at your names. I'm visualizing you, and really, this is really odd, not seeing everybody for so long and really missing you and seeing what everybody's been doing for Hanukkah. In Los Angeles, I saw they're having like the Moshev Band is going to be performing, I think at the some fairgrounds downtown. One of the Chabads is organizing it, and people are going to be in their cars and they're going to be on a stage. It reminds me when I was like in high school and we got to go to drive-in movies. I remember going with my parents to a drive-in movie and we'd have, popcorn in the car and, all kinds of things. And anyway, it should really be, we have tonight, and then, which is the 7th night of Hanukkah, and tomorrow night is the 8th night of Hanukkah, the 8th candle of Hanukkah, the last night of Hanukkah, and it really should be that the miracles of Hanukkah just start rapidly pouring in. We need miracles for so many people, So I'm going to start because we have there is so much to learn tonight for Hanukkah. Myrna, hi. My swim partner's here. Okay, now I can start. So I want to dedicate the class tonight for many people. First, I want to dedicate it for everybody in general and in particular who needs a healing. Every single person should have a complete healing and should not have to go through any suffering. I want to say that Stephanie has a grandmother and I think a great grandmother. The notes are on my phone that I'm talking into. So if I'm wrong, you could tell me. But tonight is would have been the birthday of Stephanie's grandmother, Gittel Yenta Bas Avraham. And it is last night, the sixth night, was the yurt site of her great-grandmother, I believe, Nellie. We always say Bas Avraham if we don't know the name. I also would like to dedicate the class to the refuah shlema of one of my very best friends, a real refuah shlema, Fega Sarah Bas Gittel, an outstanding friend and wonderful teacher here in Los Angeles, who unfortunately she and her family have the virus and are not doing well. But she will be doing great-grandmother. Wow. I can't wait till I'm a great-great-grandmother. I actually am a great-grandmother. Do any of you know that? I have 6 great-grandchildren. And let's see, the oldest of my great-grandchildren is 3. So let's say, maybe 18 more years I could be a great-great-grandmother. Okay, so... and then I could be a great-great-great-great-grandmother. Okay, let's just say l'chaim on that one. Okay. Tonight's also the yurt site, the 27th yurt site of someone who was a very dear friend. His name was Benjamin Tuvia Ben Yitzhak and Rivka. And I just want to say one thing about him. His name was Barry, and his wife's name was Ora, and she lives in the Holy Land. And when we first met them and my husband invited them for Shabbos, the response was, "What's that?" And yeah, believe it or not. And I just want to share one detail. So when Barry, they had come all the time for Shabbos, and they were really starting to get very, very involved, and they were making many, many commitments in their Judaism. And they wanted to move they were living in Encino, and they wanted to move into the Pico Robertson neighborhood because they made friends there who were in the religious community, and they were drawn to some of the synagogues that were there. And they tried to sell their house for almost 2 years. And they were not successful. At that time where they lived, like 4 houses out of every 100 for sale would sell. And they also wanted to turn their house kosher completely, but they didn't want to do it before they moved. They wanted to, do it once, not have to go through the whole process of koshering their house and then move. So they said they'll become kosher when they move. And they tried to sell their house for 2 years. It did not sell. And unfortunately, Barry became ill, and his wife said, "That's it. We're making our house kosher now." And she had me come over, and we went through the whole entire house, what needed to be done, and the process, and that same week, for the first time in 2 years, there was somebody that came to look at her house. And because they kept Shabbos on whatever level they kept it on, she always would prepare for Shabbos. Shabbos was very sacred to her. You have to stop your activities a little before. So when this person was looking at her house, these first people in 2 years that were going to look at their house to buy, she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, you can't stay any longer. It's going to be the Sabbath, and I have to get ready, and we won't be able, if you're interested, you can talk to me on Sunday." And they bought the house. By the time Shabbos was over, they called, they wanted it. So it was 2 years, not one person coming, and the same week that they made the commitment to make their house kosher, it was sold. So I wanted to share that with you. It's his yard site tonight. And it's also my son Yosef's birthday, Yosef Yeshua. And Yosef, it turns 40. So for anybody who knows Yosef when he was born, be in shock. Yes, he turns 40. He's the father of 4 of the cutest kids. And his birthday interestingly, falls in this week of the parshas of the month of Kislev that talk about dreams. And I will share that a little later on when we're doing the parsha, something that happened with me and Yosef. So I want to just start off with a story. I have a lot of great Hanukkah stories for tonight. So I just want to start off with a story, and then we'll start learning. Well, stories are learning. Stories are the best part of learning, really. So I just heard the story recently, but I had heard it many, many years ago. Stella. Hi, Stella. Stella, we're davening for Fega Sarah Bas Gittel for a refuah shlema, very strongly. And the psalm is Psalm 63. So I heard this story, and then this week I heard it again from Rabbi Stolberger. So there was a man, his name was Mr. Greenbaum, and he was a Holocaust survivor. And after the war, he came to America. He was a young man during the Holocaust, and he came to America, and he decided that's it. He's not going to have anything else to do anymore with Judaism. Finished, done, that's it. And he came and he moved to Alabama. And in Alabama, he actually met a Jewish woman by chance. It wasn't his priority. And they got married and they had a child. And when this boy, let's call him Josh, was turning 13, his father knew that it was a milestone for a boy. He wasn't going to have a Happy Hanukkah, everybody. I see everybody saying Happy Hanukkah. Yeah, we can't say it enough. Let's just say it a lot. Happy Hanukkah. So he knew that it was a milestone for a boy, and he wasn't going to do a bar mitzvah, but he wanted to mark it in some way. So he said to his son, I want to buy you a really nice present for your birthday. You're 13. It's a monumental age. Let's go to the mall and we'll look around and we'll buy you a present. And he had become very successful in the world, this Mr. Greenbaum. He now called himself Mr. Green. He cut off the Baum from the green. So they go to the mall, and he takes him to this store and that store, and he wants to buy him like very fancy sports equipment or whatever, and the kid is not interested. And they're looking around, and there's an antique shop there, and he sees in the window, the son sees in the window, a wooden menorah, an old wooden menorah, and he says, I want that. And so the father says, what? You want that? And he goes, yeah, I want that. So they go in the store and they ask the man for the menorah. And the man says to them, oh, I'm sorry, that's not for sale. It's a menorah was rescued from the Holocaust. And I'm not selling it. So the father, Mr. Green, says, well, I'll give you $100 for it. And he says, no, I told you I'm not selling it. He said it might be valuable one day. So he says to him, okay, I'll give you $1,000 for it. And he said, I told you I'm not going to sell it. He said, I think that one day it might be worth $10,000. So he says, okay, I'll give you $10,000. My kid wants it. I'm going to give you $10,000 for it. And he says, okay, I'll sell it to you. Great. And he buys it and he takes it home. So he and his wife are downstairs doing something, and they hear upstairs a crash, and they go upstairs and they see that their son Josh had been playing somehow with this menorah, and it had crashed to the floor and it had split open. And it had split open into different pieces. And at first, Mr. Green was just looking like I can't believe this, in shock. And then he sees that the menorah broke into compartments, and he sees a piece of paper sticking out of one compartment. And the paper, he takes it out and he reads it. And the paper, in essence, said, if you're reading this, I want you to tell we did not survive the Holocaust. And he wrote how important it is to continue the tradition of being Jewish, and how important it is to him and to the future of the Jewish people. And the man's reading this and he faints. He actually faints. And they revive him, they bring him water, and he tells them that this letter that that was written from a Holocaust, people who's perished in the Holocaust. The person who wrote the letter, it was signed Stanley Greenbaum, and that was the father of Mr. Green. And, like, of course, the ending of the story is they re-examined their life and certainly made different choices, because this was a message that was very hard to resist. And this is like many of the stories that I am actually going to tell tonight. Each one has to do with divine providence. And you think, oh, come on, could that story have really happened? Alabama and the Holocaust? Yeah, these stories are real. These stories are happening. Everything that's happening in our life is by the hand of God. I know it's so hard in these difficult times to see it, and it's hard. It's just hard to see, but these stories are real, and these stories have a basis, and we have to learn to open our eyes and see the divine providence that is in front of us at every moment, really every single moment. So I wanted to share that with you. The stories are going to get better. Actually, I have a lot of actually amazing Hanukkah stories. So, okay. So let's learn a few teachings by the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And then I have a few more by other people. Okay. So it says that during the occupation of the Holy Land, first of all, if anybody doesn't know the history, you can go on Chabad.org and you can read the history of Hanukkah, because it's very detailed of the wars that took place between the first and the second Beis Hamikdash, and who came into the country and who was ruling the country and who fought who and what they allowed and what they didn't allow. So it's important. It's important to know. And so if you don't know the background, I suggest really you read it. Okay, so the Greeks entered the sanctuary in the Beis Hamikdash, in the holy temple, and they defiled all the vessels of olive oil that were found there. So there was a menorah, a golden menorah that stood in the temple. And this golden menorah was made out of one piece. And it had 7 bowls, so to speak, to light. And those 7 branches of the menorah represented the 7 root souls that come from the emotive aspect of the different sphirot, the different energy emanations with which the world was created and with which Jewish souls were created. But one of the things that we know about the menorah, that it was made from one piece of gold, and that means that there was a unity among all the souls. So let's say your soul shines in the quality of loving kindness, and somebody else's soul shines in the quality of strength and restraints and boundaries. But we all have all of those qualities in us together. It's just sometimes we shine in different areas. And so all this was included in the lighting of the menorah. So it says, after their defeat, the Maccabees were able only to find one little vial of oil with the seal of the high priest intact. So last week we went over a little bit about this story, so I'll just briefly go into the story in a few minutes for anybody who missed it or anybody who doesn't know the story of Hanukkah. So the Greeks, when the Syrian Greek army, they took over Israel. And one of the things about the Greeks is that they wanted to Hellenize the population, meaning they worshiped the body, they worshiped reason, they worshiped culture, they worshiped art. They were not the people that came and wanted to wipe out the Jewish nation. Let's say like half the world wanted to, and God forbid, still wants to. No, they wanted to Hellenize the Jewish nation. What does it mean, Hellenize the Jewish nation? They wanted them to, they liked those sweet little rituals. You know, there were a lot of things they didn't object to. So they wanted their culture, they wanted their art, but there were other things which we will go into that they objected to very, very strongly. So they came into the temple, and that the Talmud says that the Greeks defiled all the vials, all the little bottles of oil that they could find, and they didn't destroy them, they defiled them. They didn't use them, they defiled them. So what did they gain by defiling them? So this is really the essence of the underlying teaching about the oil. So the menorah was lit with pure olive oil, and the olive oil was made by the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, and it had a seal of the priest on it. And when the Greeks came and they destroyed the holy temple, and they found all these bottles of oil, they didn't destroy the oil, they defiled the oil. And that was a very big difference. They didn't take the oil, they left it there, but it was in a defiled state. So what does it mean they defiled it? They opened the bottles, who knows, they might have squeezed a little pig juice in it, or other things that we might not know what they put in it, but they defiled it. So it says when the Greeks were building their empire, they did not go about destroying nations. They wanted to assimilate them into their culture. They wanted them to become Greek, really. And this was their policy when they became rulers over Eretz Yisrael. And there's a special prayer that we say in the silent prayer that we repeat in the prayer services, and in the prayer is after we eat, and it's called the Al Hanisim, and it says that the Greeks tried to force the Jews to forget your Torah and to violate the decrees of your will. Meaning, who's your? God. They wanted them to forget the Torah as it is connected to God. Not to forget the Torah, to forget it as it's connected to God, because they appreciated the wisdom of Torah, the beauty of Torah. But they opposed Torah as a godly revelation, and they would have liked Torah to be studied like any kind of human wisdom, being insensitive to the godliness. It's like if you went to UCLA, like Shirley Perlis went to college. I know Shirley went to college. And if you went to college and you wanted to take a class like Judaism 1A, Judaism 1B, so it would be about the culture, it would be about the history, it would be about the art, it would be about the archaeology, but that's the way the Greeks wanted the Jews to pursue their Torah, not with a connection to God. Because they knew that every people has its own rituals, and rituals are kind of nice. But it says that they objected to this unique quality of connecting to God, that mitzvahs means connection, and that the mitzvahs, the commandments, were the way to connect to God. And what happens when we connect to God? It takes us beyond our human limits. And so we say that from the Al Hanisim prayer, it speaks of Hukei Ritzonecha, meaning the decrees of your will. So in the commandments, there are three main different types of commandments. There's what we call the Mishpatim, which are the judgments, the Eidos, which are the testimonials, and the Chukim, which are the decrees. So the Mishpatim, what is Shirley saying? Oh, Shirley, you're so sweet. The Mishpatim are the mitzvahs that appeal to reason, like don't steal and don't murder. They're logical, of course. Everybody could understand why not to steal and why not to murder. The Eidos commandments commemorate events in Jewish history, such as eating matzah on Passover, sitting in a sukkah on Sukkot. And the Chukim are those mitzvahs which are supra rational, meaning a decree from God which we do not question. What are those? Observing the Shabbat. Circumcision, the mitzvah, the commandment of circumcision, eating kosher, wearing shatnez. There are many mitzvahs that come under this category of hukim. So the Eidos and Mishpatim enable us to relate to God. How? Through our wisdom and intellect. But the hukim put us in a category where we rise beyond our limitations of understanding. That they connect us, these mitzvahs connect us to the infinite dimension of godliness. And it was these observance, that was the observance of these particular mitzvahs that the Greeks did not want the Jews to engage in. And there, if you go back and you read the history of what happened with the Jews, the Jewish nation, unfortunately, many Jews did Hellenize. Many Jews did go along with it. They like those, toga parties where they lie on the couches and they'd eat a lot of meat. And in fact, the majority of the people Hellenized. And there was only a very small band of Jews, the Hashmonayims, and led by Judah Maccabee, and they were refusing to give in to the desecration of the Jewish people and the desecration. They tried to force, they brought a pig into the temple, and then they tried to force one of the elders to eat a pig, and then they wanted somebody just to pretend they were licking the pig, and one of the Maccabees, I think it was Judah Maccabee, rose up and killed him, and that started the battle. So there became a battle between the Greeks and the Jews. And it was a very small band of Jews that were able to overpower and win in a military victory. 40,000 or more were against a very small group of people. And they won. It's like the 6-Day War. It's like we must place our faith and our trust in God and know that God can make anything happen, and there's a promise that he will bring Mashiach for the Jews, and that is really what we're relying on. So this is what happened. The Greeks tried to take God out of Judaism. And we understand why now they were so intent on defiling the oil, because they wanted the menorah to be lit with impure oil. And they wanted it to shine. They wanted the menorah lit. They wanted it to shine, but they didn't want it to shine with purity and godliness. They wanted it to shine with that Greek touch, that little Greek touch. And Happy Hanukkah for all the people that just came. Okay, and the Jews responded with what we call Mesiras Nefesh, self-sacrifice, that went beyond the limits of reason. If you would see 40,000 people coming down the mountain, and you're a small band, where would one even get that strength to know that they're just going to go forward and they're just going to win? And they were pitted against, this was the world's strongest military power, but they were going to give up. They were not going to give in. They were going to fight until they were able to study your Torah and your decrees, meaning God. And it just reminds me of my beautiful dear friend Sarah Nakshan, and her husband Barak Ben Leah is another person who really, really needs our prayers for a complete healing. But when she and the holy women went into the city of Hebron, and they stood against the Arabs, and they stood against the Jews that didn't want them there, and they stood strong. And they're standing strong, this group of 7 women with their 54 children living in deplorable conditions, that broken down buildings with garbage in it from 1929, no windows, no amenities, nothing, for 1 year living like this. But because of it, the Jews were able to regain and have a foothold in the holy city of Hebron. And they took their strength from the Maccabees. I mean, we all can gain our strength from the Maccabees. So this power of what we call Mesiras Nefesh, this power of self-sacrifice, is symbolized by this one cruse of oil, which still bore the seal of the high priest. So as the story goes, they searched for oil. They came into the temple, and they wanted to reignite. They wanted to reignite the menorah, but all they could find was the defiled oil. Now, according to Jewish law, they would have been permitted to light with this oil. That it wasn't they only had to use that oil, but they would have been permitted, but they couldn't. It went against their souls. It went against who they were. They could not light with defiled oil. They just couldn't do it. And they kept looking and looking and looking and looking. Remember, they were defeated also. They were, not defeated militarily, but they were exhausted. They just fought this terrible, terrible battle. And now they're looking for oil, and they just want to go home and sleep. They're looking for this oil, and they couldn't find it, and they just never gave up looking. And it says that, why did it need the seal of the high priest? Why was it so necessary for them that they had to find oil with this seal? So it says, according to the Rambam writes that in the Beis Hamikdash, the high priest, the job of the high priest in his glory, he was not allowed to leave Jerusalem at all. That he couldn't go out in the day, and he could only go home at night, and his home had to be in Jerusalem. And he could not ever leave Jerusalem. So the name Yerushalayim comes from two Hebrew words, Yira Shalem. Yira means awe, Shalem means complete. So it says together they form complete awe. Means the high priest never leaves Jerusalem, means that he never abandons this awe, this all-encompassing level of awe of God. And it says, guess what? Within each of our hearts, we also have that spark in us. We can relate to God with the intensity of the high priest. And I think this is such an important point, that we cannot lose fact of that Judaism gives to us the responsibility. It says in particular for women are what's called the Akeret Habayit, the mainstay of their home. And a woman is compared to a high priest, just like the high priests that live in their home. That's how a woman is compared to the high priest that does the service in the Holy Temple. That's what a woman is in her home. So in our hearts, deep in our hearts, we have this complete awe. We have this deep, deep connection to God. And what is the potential to reach it? It's that one small cruse of oil that's hidden in every person waiting to be discovered. It's there, it's buried, it just has to be found. It has to be taken out, and it has to be found. And it says, and when challenged, often this inner connection will surface. And when, I remember when I first started to read about the Inquisition, and how there were people who really never even identified as Jews in their lifetime. But when they were being forced to convert, they gave up their lives rather than convert. It's when you think about that, it's like, where did that come from? That attachment and that desire to never leave that place of being a Jew. So it says, when this bond comes, God will deliver the mighty into the hands of the weak and the many into the hands of the few, because there's a certain depth of essence and power that nothing can erase or put down. So it says that it was in their struggle against the Greeks that the Maccabees were able to reach deep inside themselves into this resource of finding that small cruse of oil, and they revealed a level of soul that normally transcended all limits. And what happened? And in return, God was able to reveal this in the natural world. So it says in our day today, at the Hanukkah lights remind us that through your Torah and the decrees of your will, that we can connect to an infinite, with our finite minds, we can connect to an infinite dimension of Torah and commandments, and we can have a very deep connection with God. And we're going to go on to see why and how there was a miracle in the spiritual. So we know about the military miracle. And now there's this spiritual miracle. And what was the spiritual miracle? That this one small cruse of oil stayed lit for 8 days. And why 8 days? Why was it 8? Because that's the number of days it took for the new olive oil to be made by the high priest. It took 8 days from the crushing and the processing, and I never made olive oil, but that's what it took, was the 8 days. So we know that Hanukkah is one of the deepest and most meaningful of holidays, and it's so interesting because it's so deep, and we have these lights, and people think of it as, fun. Nobody ever says, oh no, Hanukkah's coming. People like might go, oh no, Pesach is coming, Passover. But nobody ever goes, oh no, Hanukkah is coming. And it's a time of rejoicing, in normal times. I don't know what that means, actually, normal times. I mean, I'm not saying that. What is normal? This is our normal. But in previous times, let's say, everywhere you went, there was Hanukkah menorah lightings, and there was music, and there was celebration, and one of the things about Hanukkah is the publicizing of the miracle. That is one of the essential ingredients of Hanukkah. And I think I might have said this last week, but it doesn't hurt to say it again, that the first public menorah lighting of all the thousands of menorah public lightings in the world, the first one was in San Francisco in Union Square, and it was sponsored by Bill Graham, who was the famous, well, if you're my age, famous rock and roll promoter who opened the Fillmore Auditoriums, who sponsored the Grateful Dead, and every famous singer during that time had a connection to Bill Graham. And another time you'll remind me, not for now, because now we're in Hanukkah, but I will tell you about our Sukkot party that we had at Bill Graham's house. That was actually quite fascinating also. I might have mentioned it this year on Sukkot. So it says, when we light our own candles, we're drawing down into our own life those miraculous lights that were drawn down in that time. It's very important when you light your menorahs to sit and look at the candles. And there's a book, it's called, I think, 8 Meditations for 8 Lights or something, by Rabbi Dov Ber Pinson, that talks about different meditations that people can do while they're looking at the menorah. It's just a very peaceful time. It's a beautiful time to sit. I'm here every night with my son Kobe. He lights the menorah, and we sit. And because he's in music, there's some very famous, one of the best music people in the world, but I wouldn't know his name because he's not from the 60s. So he usually does for Christmas a big musical festival of different musicians for Christmas. But this year he decided to do Hanukkah because one of his best friends is Jewish. And so for 8 nights of Hanukkah, each night he features another famous Jewish musician, and he plays their music. One night it was Drake, one night it was Bob Dylan. Tonight, there are some of them I don't know. What was it? Oh, I think the Beastie Boys. So each night, whoever was Jewish, he plays their music and features them, and it's like a happy Hanukkah. It's like that. Yes, that's it. Foo Fighters. Yes. Oh, Stephanie, you're so cool. but that's publicizing the miracle. It's publicizing it. That's what we need to do. We need to bring it out into the public. And we're taught that it's not just for Jews. It's also gives encouragement and strength to non-Jews, because they can see that the weak or the small amount that stands up for truth and justice are the ones who can overcome that darkness. Because we're saying that when does Hanukkah take place? It takes place during the darkest time of the winter. And yes, Phyllis, it's David Grohl. Yes, doing the concerts for Hanukkah. It's a lot of fun. My son and I bond over that. But it's the darkest time, and we're bringing light into the darkness. Also, we know that the Hanukkah lights, there are 36 lights altogether, if you add them all up for all the 8 nights. And we know that there were 36 hours that this light, this primordial light that was created before the sunlight, what's called the organuz, it burned for 36 hours after it was created. And we also know that there are 36 hidden tzaddikim, 36 hidden righteous people on which the world stands. So it says when we kindle these lights and we rededicate the temple, it illuminates what we call our soul. And the Hebrew word for soul is nephesh. And it says that it's made up of 3 letters, a nun, a pei, and a shin. And that's an acronym for ner, pisila, and shemen, meaning flame, wick, and oil. So your soul is the flame and the wick and the oil that can connect us, meaning you and me and everyone, to godliness. So in this era of the second Beis Hamikdash, and these terrible decrees against the Jews and the suppression and the cruelty that was crushing to them, we overcame our enemies and we destroyed them. And here we see that there were 2 miracles that we're going to talk about, which we already did, but we're going to repeat them. The military victory, in which God delivered the mighty into the hands of the weak and the many into the hands of the few. And the miracle through which the oil in the golden menorah burned for 8 days rather than 1 day. So I found this beautiful teaching by Rabbi Cook. And Rabbi Cook was the first rabbi, chief rabbi, the first chief rabbi of Eretz Israel when Israel was came back into its strength. His name, Rabbi Avram Cook, and he said that he's teaching a deeper level of what lies behind the story of Hanukkah and about oil. He said oil is in the inner part of the olive, which means it's the essence of the olive. And it's when the Greeks came into the temple and destroyed hundreds of flasks of oil, this was only one aspect of their vicious assault. Their most destructive assault was on the inner essence of the Jewish people. That's what they were aiming for, to destroy that inner essence of the Jewish people. And they began to defile and corrupt the very character and constitution of the Jew. And it's interesting because when we think, if anybody here knows or is from a family from Russia, that crushing of spirit that was tried to crush the Jews, to destroy them, but more than destroy them, to crush them. And the Rebbes just kept sending emissary after emissary after emissary all the years. I remember a story where somebody came to the Frierdiker Rebbe to tell him that he could no longer do what was being asked. It's a very long story, but in short. And the Rebbe just sat there weeping and saying to him, and next you will do so-and-so. Like there was no stopping. It was just going forward and going forward. And it says why, and here's Rabbi Cook is telling us why. There's something wondrous about the nature of the Jewish nation. We are a nation of priests. Mamleches Kohanim. Every single Jew is called a Kohen, a priest. And every Jew has this quality of a Kohen, an inner longing to live a life of holiness, sanctity, and closeness to the Creator. And that's the real truth. You know, that is what we're looking for. That is what we're looking for, even when we don't know we're looking for that. That sums it up right there. A life of holiness, sanctity, and closeness to the Creator. And this is the symbol of the little jug of oil that's sealed with the stamp of the high priest. This is the deepest part of a Jew's soul. The heart of the Jew is always attached to the divine. So he goes on to say that in the category of what we call halacha, which is law, that relate to the giving of tithes, which is, everybody knows what a tithe is. It's a percentage that you give of your possession, your food, your agriculture, or your money, or something of that. So generally, these donations were given to the Kohanim and to the Levite, but there is one tithe that was called Meiser Sheni, which is not given to the Kohen. It is designated for every Israelite, meaning us, regular people. And every person in Israel would take a portion of their fruits and vegetables, and they would go to Jerusalem, and they would eat it in Jerusalem, in the holy city. And that was how everyone raised their Kohen quality, by eating these holy tithes, the tithe they were obligated to live in a sacred setting, Jerusalem, and that likened the Jew to a Kohen. And it says, despite how things appear on the outside, there remains a pure jug of oil on the inside. And the Jewish soul cannot be corrupted, because inside there is that level of purity that remains untouched and unblemished, like that cruse of oil. And it says that Rabbi Kook had a capacity to see the good in every Jew, and that every Jew is longing for holiness. And when you see this, it's transformative. It's transformative for those who see it and for those who experience it. And so we have to look for the depth in every person. And there's this, many years my husband and I and our children, who used to be babysat by the homeless on the beach. I don't know how that happened, but it was a different kind of homeless in those days. And we used to go on Sundays. We go every week, and we go to Venice Beach, and we set up a table, and we look for Jews, and we give out candles and tefillin, and no matter holiday, or we just schmooze. We had an astrology table. I'm sure there are many people who are watching tonight we might have first met at Venice Beach. Now today I wouldn't go to Venice Beach because, sad to say, it's a not very pleasant place to go to. But then it was really busy and hopping and tons of Jews. And so for Hanukkah, we set up a big table, and on the table, my husband put a big, big, big bowl of dreidels, and then we had menorahs and candles. So the dreidels were really when people would come over and say, "Oh, what's that?" And we'd say, "Are you Jewish?" And if they weren't Jewish, we'd say, "Oh, it's for our holiday of Hanukkah, and here we want you to have a dreidel. It's it symbolizes one of the games we play on Hanukkah." But if somebody was Jewish, then we would give them a menorah. So there was a 12-year-old girl that was walking on the boardwalk, and she came over and she said, "Oh, what's that?" And we said, "Well, it's the holiday of Hanukkah." And we were explaining the holiday of Hanukkah to everybody who, and she said, "Oh, what?" And she pointed to the menorah, and what's that? And can I have one? And I said, "Are you Jewish?" She said, "No, I'm Christian." So I said, "Oh, so that's just like for Jewish people." But we have these we had tons of color. Pick a color of a dreidel, whatever dreidel you want. And she picked a dreidel. And then she was just standing there. She wasn't moving. She was there for maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes. We were talking to other people. We were, kind of schmoozing with her. And she says, "Can I have a menorah for my mother?" So I just looked at her. I said, "Is your mother Jewish?" and she said, yes, my mother's Jewish. So can I have a menorah for her? So I said, how is your mother Jewish? And this is your mother? You were born from this mother? She said, yes. So I said, well, do you know that means that you're actually Jewish? And she said, no. She said, my mother is Jewish and my father is Christian. And they told me that I could choose. So I chose being a Christian. And I looked at her and I said, I am going to give you a menorah for your mother, and I am going to give you a menorah for you. And I want you to always remember that you are a Jew, that this is yours. And I'm going to teach you the blessings, and I'm going to teach you how to light the menorah. And her face was just lit up in a big smile. And I can't tell you the end of the story because maybe one day she'll knock on my door and she's like, here I am, But, that spark without even knowing, you could see that light. You could see that light go off. So we also call these 8 days of Hanukkah days of happiness and praise to God. And we kindle the lights in the evenings. And it says happiness and praise commemorate two different levels of the two different miracles. So happiness refers to the custom that we have feasts, that we eat. I know you're going to find this surprising, but we eat a lot during Hanukkah. Especially, I have my very world famous latkes. I think I make them mostly because I like to make them. I mean, I don't know how to make a small amount because I used to have 60 people for dinner. So I made enough last week for about maybe 40. And then after Shabbos, I made them on Friday. I had to drive them around town and drop them off at my kids. But we use a lot of oil. We make donuts. My daughter Hindela in Israel had a donut making party for kids today. So that's part of the commemorating. We're commemorating the military victory because the military victory was material. And we celebrate it physically, and we do celebrate it by eating and drinking and celebrating with other people. And the miracle of the menorah was spiritual, and it is commemorated through spiritual activities such as reciting the blessings of what we call Hallel, the blessings of praise in our prayers. So we know that light is the most spiritual element in our material world, and I want to do also a teaching by Yehudis Golev. I always say her last name wrong. Golevsky, perhaps. She teaches at Shviti in Yerushalayim, and I want to highly recommend their program of learning. And if you look it up, Shviti, Shiviti, but you won't find it that way. I'll have to, you know what? I'll put it on my a Facebook page what the contact is, because I once tried to Google Shaviti and I got some other weird things that come up. So it's out of the Yeshiva Simchat Shlomo. So if you look up the Yeshiva Simchat Shlomo in Jerusalem, you will find it. They have an extensive women's program, all classes in English, extraordinary teachers, and they're starting again in probably a week, their whole cycle of different classes. Okay, here's Miranda said Golshevsky. Okay, and so she taught about how the candle is just the whole physical candle is just like a container to hold the spirituality of light. So that was what happened with the spiritual aspect of this victory over the Greeks. It was this expression of the miracle of lights in the menorah and in the Beis Hamikdash. And it says that Hanukkah is a holiday of spiritual light. And even the war against the Greeks, as we've seen from the previous Sikha, was spiritual. And it was a struggle to preserve the Jewish, to preserve our heritage from this tainting of the Greeks. Okay, so we're just going to go on. Okay, so the special mitzvah of Hanukkah, I just want to say one more thing about the 8 days. That there are many different levels, and I I can't really now go into the different levels of light and burning, but if you go on YouTube, last week's class that Miriam Rhodes taught for Galeini, Galeini, or you can look up Miriam Rhodes. She talks about the different levels, the 3 different levels of the burning of the candles and what it meant, of the miracle of the burning of the 8 days, because the candles needed to be lit to a certain height. It's not like they each day they had to go up to a certain mark. You have to have a certain amount of oil in the holders for the candles to be lit. So it's interesting. It's very detailed, but it's interesting. Okay. So how is light created? That's what we're going to go into next. So we take a physical object, oil, wood, any kind of fuel, and we heat it until it loses its physicality, and then it brightens, it lightens its surroundings. So the lights that we light on Hanukkah derive from the lights that were lit in the sanctuary. We are we are not commemorating. I just want to say clearly, we're not commemorating. Because we're really reliving Hanukkah. It's not like we're celebrating it because it was a holiday that happened for those Jews back then. No. There is personal experience and personal revelation in the lighting of the Hanukkah candles and the lighting of the menorah. I just popped into my mind now. Such an interesting memory that I was once traveling from, I'm sure I had a baby with me, I don't remember who, but I was just traveling from New York back home to Los Angeles, and the plane was going through St. Louis. It's one of the things I try never to do, is to take a plane that's going to stop anywhere. And the plane was driving through St. Louis, stopped in St. Louis, and then we had to get off the plane because there was a mechanical difficulty, and it was going to take a while for the plane to be fixed. And it was Hanukkah, and we were going to get home, like it was going to be too late to light the menorah, and I thought I would be home in time to light the menorah, and I wasn't. And I did have a menorah and candles with me. And it was a time that airports were very different. It was a time that you could go into an airport and you could actually go up to the gate and meet your friends, or you could actually get on a plane without any identification at all. So I had a menorah, and I took it out, and then I went around the waiting room. I have to say, it did take a lot of courage to do that, but I did picture the Lubavitcher Rebbe wanting Jews to light a menorah. It really actually was a little difficult, but I did. And I went around and I said, if there anybody here who wants to join in with lighting the candles, I have a menorah for Hanukkah and we're going to light candles now. And maybe there were 30 people around, and we lit the menorah right there at the St. Louis airport. So, it's for us. It's for us now, that when we're lighting the candles. It's not just only because it happened for our ancestors in those days, in that time. So it says that in the Holy Temple, the Hanukkah lights of the sanctuary were lit. But when the miracle occurred for Hanukkah, the miracle, the pure oil couldn't be found. There was a miracle. This flask of oil that was sealed with the high priest was found, and it burned for 8 days. So the lights of Hanukkah, the lights that we light now in the menorah, which really is, we call it a Hanukkah, these lights are different than the light that was lit for the menorah that stood in the temple. So the light in the sanctuary was always the same number. There was always 7 lights lit every single time. On Hanukkah, we light 1, then we light 2, then we light 3. We increase every evening, we add a new light. The lights in the sanctuary were lit in the daytime, and while it was still bright out. That meant when godliness was revealed, when life was much easier, when things were, nobody was fighting up against godliness. And it says, and when do we light the lights of Hanukkah? We light them after sunset. And the lights of the sanctuary were indoors, but the lights of Hanukkah are placed on out, facing to your outside. And really, if you go to Eretz Israel, you will see homes where they have glass boxes outside their houses. And their homes, we are supposed to light up the darkness, light up the outside. So it says that also the lights in the Mishkan, in the sanctuary, were observed at the time when Israel did not lack anything materially. So it says, even throughout the period of the Mishkan in the desert, the Jews had everything that they required. There was food from the manna. There was water from the well of Miriam. And their garments grew with them. So my favorite jean skirt I could wear my whole entire life. It would grow with you. And their clothes were dry cleaned or always clean. But it says when the sanctuary was built in the times of Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, and the menorah was lit there, again there was peace that existed for Israel. No one was waging war against the Jews, and there was a state of Judah and Israel dwelled in safety. And we know this famous quote that every person was under their vine and under their fig tree. And spirituality also was in this state of peace and tranquility. And it says that when untroubled by mundane worries, there is a total devotion to Torah and mitzvahs, to spiritual and Jewish matters. And I always felt that because I grew up, and so many of us that went on a search for Judaism and might have gone into many other paths and now came back and are Jewish, that we had the freedom to do it because we didn't have worries. We didn't have material concerns. And we had families that really supported us in such a way that we had a freedom to explore the world and to come to find our souls in a certain sense, in a very peaceful way. So it says that the lights of Hanukkah came when the country was under foreign oppression, and the Jewish army was very, very small, and there was no pure oil for even a single night, and they had to search and search and search. So it says a time of material welfare is also a time of spiritual welfare. And there was no need for wars, and there was no need for what we call Mesiras Nefesh, for this like sacrifice of the soul, the pressing of the soul. And it says, so therefore the lights could be the same number every day. So the lights of the menorah were 7 every single day, 7, 7, 7. Because when everything runs normally, there's no need to increase. There's no need for supplemental activity. And there's no extra effort needed to illuminate the street, to let the light shine to the outside, because the world outside wasn't dark. It was a safe place. It was materially prosperous place. So when the menorah was burning in the sanctuary, the street too was illuminated. It was just a reflection. We know that the light of the Beis Hamikdash shone out into the world and illuminated the whole entire world. But in a difficult period, in a time of wars, not only against the Jews, but wars just in general, that level of chaos in the world, that even the Jews that became Hellenists, they didn't care about the sanctuary. They didn't care about the Beis Hamikdash. And in some sense, it feels to me sometimes like Jews today, it breaks your heart that Jews that don't have a connection to Eretz Israel and don't understand that it's the heart and soul of all of us, that there's something so deep in that. It's not a country. It's not like America or Guatemala, or it's Eretz Israel. It has a different connection, but there are Jews that don't have a connection, that feel nothing, that don't have that. I remember Esther Young Rice, Alav Shalom, who inspired many souls. And I remember once, it's very interesting. I actually asked my mother, I was raised not observant, and I asked my mother when I became observant of Judaism if she would go to the mikveh. And she agreed. And so I was taking her one night. It was in Great Neck. I remember it in Great Neck at some synagogue. And there was a mikveh there. And we were going to that mikveh. And afterwards, there was a huge amount of cars and people and sanctuary. And I said, let's go in and see what's there. And it was Esther Youngrice, Rebbitzin Esther Youngrice speaking. I never saw her before. I don't even know if I ever heard of her at that time. And she was saying that there were Jews that have the freedom and the money to travel everywhere in the world, and they go every country, this country and that, and they never have been in Israel, and they have no desire to come to their homelands, to have that depth of connection. And so it says that there were in those times Jewish Hellenists that cared nothing for the menorah, cared nothing about the sanctuary, nothing about the godliness that was connected to Judaism. And they wanted to be assimilated. And so there was a need for this quality of what we call Mesiras Nefesh, of this self-sacrifice, the pressing out of the soul. And that is why during this time we had the Hanukkah candles to light up the darkness. And it says that in such a time, remember, I have hundreds of these high center Teufel cups in my house, if anybody wants. In such a time, it is not enough to illuminate one's own home, because the darkness that's outside in the street can come right into our homes. That's for sure. And so we need to illuminate the street, and we light the Hanukkah lamp when it's dark and by the door in order to illuminate the outside. And what do we know about the lights? Not like in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, the menorah could have the same amount of lights every night. But now in this time of darkness, we need to increase. What you did the day before, the night before, is not enough. There has to be a continuous progression, a continuous ascent, rising higher and higher. So it says that one should not, though, be shaken by the darkness outside, regardless of how powerful it is. One has to go with this level of Mesiras Nefesh, self-sacrifice, to illuminate the street, daily augmenting the light until there will be more light, until more pure oil can be produced. We have to be out there. And it should be in the following way. Number one must not be content with the light used to illuminate the previous day. Every day we have to add more light. So today is one light, tomorrow is two light, the day after is three. One cannot take a leap by beginning with many. We begin with one light. It's okay to begin with one light. And we have to be ready and prepared to add another and another. I know, like every year, for many years, at the Jewish festival that we would have in Rancho Park, and there'd be like 20,000 Jews or something there. And now, in the last, like, say, 15, 20 years, there were a lot of helpers. But like 40 years ago, when we used to have these fairs, or however long ago, and I used to go with candles to give out, to light, for people to light. And it was hard. The first, I have to say, even though I seem like I could go up to anybody and ask them anything, Happy Hanukkah, everybody coming on now. But it was hard to approach people, even though, you hear the voice of the Lubavitcher Rebbe saying, add more light. Jewish women need to add light, need to light up the world, need to light Shabbos candles. Going to these fairs and 20,000 people, and I have like 20,000 candles to give out. And it was hard. That first person was hard, but I knew if I could ask one person to light, then I could ask another person to light. Then I could ask another person to light, until it became like just such a pleasure to ask people to light. And most people would hug me and be so thankful. The response was always beautiful, really beautiful. But that, so we have to, every day we have to add. We have to, take our courage and call one more person. Ask one more person how they are today. Do another mitzvah, whatever it is. But we need in this time of darkness, we need to be adding, because we know that if you have the Hasidic concept, if you have a totally dark room and you strike a match, one match has the ability to dispel a whole room of darkness. And we can't be content only with lighting our own homes. We need to go into the street. We need to illuminate other people. We need to give them that opportunity to light a candle. And I remember I have a friend in Israel. Her name is Yehudit Goldstein. None of you know her, but she was in the IDF. And she was in a nightclub. She was Israeli, and she was in a nightclub in Tel Aviv. I mean, this could be 35 years ago or more. She was in a nightclub in Tel Aviv with, a few of her friends. And there was a Chabad rabbi that came into this nightclub, plunked down a menorah, lit this menorah in the middle of this nightclub. And Yehudit said that every single person there eventually connected their life to become involved with Judaism again from that one night lighting that menorah in that wild nightclub in Tel Aviv. So, we have to put ourselves out into these places, and we have to light. I mean, a lot of people like to be in a nightclub right now, but okay. And how are we going to do this? We do it with this level that we call Mesiras Nefesh, this quality of transcending nature. Like, I know you won't believe, but I used to be shy. I had to transcend my nature to do these things. Now I can do them, but for many years I had to train myself in doing them. And this is being asked of everybody. You can't fall back on the excuse, well, I'm a shy person, and learn how not to be. We used to have these Chabad women's meetings, and people would say, I can't go up to anybody. So I do like these training sessions, like pretending I'm in a supermarket, looking into somebody's, basket and going, oh, I see you have a jar of horseradish. Are you Jewish? Like find that way that you can make an opening. And this is demanded of everybody. I'm not saying these words. These are not my words. These are the words of the leader of the generation, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He's saying everyone should know they're an ambassador of God to warm the physical environment of their part of the world so that it will illuminate the person and their environment. The Rebbe is saying it. Everybody's an ambassador. And it has to be done more. You can't sit back on what you did yesterday. And we have to add more light. And we can be aware of yesterday's accomplishments, but it's only in terms of knowing how much more should be added today. And ultimately, our efforts will be crowned with success, and the street will be bright with an increasing light, and then we will find this pure oil to light in the sanctuary. So before continuing, I'm going to actually share another story for all those people who like stories, okay? And this one has to do with my husband and Hanukkah. So when he first came to Los Angeles in 1969, and he was a campus rabbi, as I said before, he and Rabbi Stillman were the first Chabad campus rabbis of any of the Chabad houses anywhere in the world. So everything they were doing, they were creating anew, and also they were fresh out of Brooklyn. So fresh out of Brooklyn, maybe he might have been wearing a white shirt in those days. It's hard to know before the colored T-shirts. But they were on a campaign to give out Hanukkah menorahs and to get Jewish students. He was on many different campuses. He used to go to UCLA mainly, and then USC, and then Northridge, and then a few junior colleges. And it was Hanukkah. It was a week of Hanukkah. And before Hanukkah, he had covered the whole campus of UCLA the week before and gave out menorahs, and he had a whole trunk full of a car full of menorahs. And he and Rabbi Stillman decided that they would go down to San Diego. There was no Chabad yet in San Diego. And they would go to San Diego State and they would give out hundreds of menorahs to the Jewish students there. So they go down, they drive all the way from Los Angeles to San Diego. For anybody who doesn't live in this area, it's about a 2.5-hour drive. And they get to the campus, and the campus is totally closed. And they go by the dormitories, and everything is totally closed. And it's, guess what? It's Christmas Eve. So they don't know from Christmas Eve. It's not they don't know Christmas Eve, but they don't know that the schools are all closed down, whatever. And now they're in San Diego, and they have this car full of menorahs. And they figure, okay, they're going to have to turn around and drive back. And I don't know if it's being from Brooklyn or not being too observant or being, I don't know what, but they didn't realize that their car was on empty. Now, it's probably 1970, and it's San Diego, which was not Los Angeles, and there's no self-service gas stations, and things are still closed on Sundays, and certainly on Christmas Eve. There is not a place that would be open, and they are watching their car meter going down, and they realize that they don't know what to do because they're not going to find a gas station. And so they're driving along, they're in a residential area, and they just drive until the car stops, till it won't go anymore. And they pull over, and it's 2 a.m. And they see across the street, a few doors down, they see a light on in a house, and they figured, they know it's going to sound weird, but they're going to pick themselves up, and they are going to go knock on that door and see maybe they can use a phone, maybe they can find some gas. They don't know really what they're going to do. So they knock on the phone and knock on the door, and the door opens, and there's this very tall African-American man standing there, and he looks at them. They definitely look like rabbis in those days. He looks at them and he yells to the back room, "Zelda, come out here, quick." And this student comes out, and guess what? Zelda's Jewish. And she looks at them and she says, "What are you doing here? How did you get here?" And they started to tell her, it's Hanukkah, and we went to the campus to give out menorahs. And the girl goes, "What?" She said, "My mother sent me in the mail this week a box of candles. And my mother wrote me, you must get a menorah and you must light your candles for Hanukkah." And she said, "I went to the Jewish bookstore in town." There was one Jewish kind of store in town. And she said the menorah was $75 and I couldn't afford it. "So I haven't been able to light my candles. I don't have a menorah. Do you have a menorah?" And they go, "Do we have a menorah? We have a car full of menorahs." And they brought her a menorah. And they stayed up, and they spent the night staying up, talking with her. And they connected very strongly. And this woman went on to drastically change her life. She became totally observant. She is now a grandmother, maybe even a great-grandmother, and had 8 children and lives a very Hasidic, observant life. And that was the miracle of the Hanukkah. That was the miracle of running out of gas and being not aware at Christmas Eve you don't fill up at a gas station, that you run out. So, you think that, oh no, they thought, oh no. They came all the way these hours down. All the way, and the school was closed and the dorms was closed. But here, look what happened. She became this huge force in the Jewish community and changed many other people's lives. So, okay, so let's go on with the Sicha by the Rebbe, and then at the end I have another great, very moving story. It's not my story, it's somebody else's story, but it's a really a tremendous story. That's just to entice you to listen to the class. No, anybody can leave at any time. I know this. Double welcome. Oh, we have a contestant from Minnesota. The coldest, you're probably in the coldest place of anybody that's watching. Okay, so it says that the mitzvah of the Hanukkah lights differ from all other commandments in two different respects, meaning that every mitzvah, every commandment can be fulfilled in accordance with how it's the Jewish law tells it, says you have to do it. Or you can add to it. It's called Hiddur Mitzvah. You can adorn the mitzvah. You can beautify the mitzvah, going beyond the strict requirements of the law. You know, one of the things when I used to speak in my younger years to different groups and talked about lighting Shabbos candles, I would always tell people that I love color, and I would light in my home tall colored candles. That was what I thought was beautiful. You know, that you take a mitzvah, and I think I shared this story once before, so I'm not going to share it again here, but I was speaking at a spirituality conference to 90 women, and somebody told me, no, you can't, you're not allowed to light tall colored candles. You have to light those short, ugly ones. And I go, no, you don't. You know, like, we can beautify every mitzvah that we do. It's very important to beautify the mitzvah because you make it more personal. You actually really make it more your own. So in the lighting of the Hanukkah lights, there is the mitzvah of lighting, and then there's the mitzvah of beautifying, of what we call mahadrin min mahadrin, making it more beautiful. And what would that refer to? So we know that you need to light the Hanukkah light every night. And you could technically, you could light one candle. That's technically okay to light one candle. And it says, but what do? We don't. We light first night one, second night two, third night three. That's beautifying the mitzvah. So that we know, again, we said in the beginning when we were learning a different sichel, we said there was the military victory where we recite the Hallel, and then there are the prayers of thanksgiving, and then there is the miracle with the flask of oil with which we light the candles. So it says that there are different ways of conducting ourselves and different ways that God reveals himself in the universe in different ways. So number one is the way of natural conduct, meaning that we do things according to the natural order within nature. Then there's this miraculous level where we transcend nature. So the warfare, the victory, the military victory came under transcending nature. And it delivered, the strong was delivered into the hands of the weak. And it was on a miraculous level which transcends the boundaries of nature. And if we have time, there is a teaching on that. I mean, we'll just make time. None of us are really going anywhere. And we'll go into that in a little more depth. Then there's the supra-miraculous conduct. And it says this is for the spiritual needs of the soul. And things that are only done to beautify that connection with soul. So the miracle of finding the pure oil falls into this category because it was a purely spiritual nature. It related to the soul alone. And then it demonstrated the love that God had for Israel. So it says that there is a basic premise that all that happens on high depends on what we do below. We're creating an opening. We're creating kind of like a mirror image. And it says that there's a psalm that says the eternal is your shade, meaning that we are reflecting what we're doing, what will be reflected on high. So says there are three forms of spiritual work, of avoda, which bring out these three different forms of divine conduct. One, the natural conduct is the normal way to observe Torah and mitzvahs. And we learn from Torah, it says, if you walk in my ordinances, then I will give you rains in their seasons, and the land shall yield its produce and all other blessings. There's the supernatural, miraculous conduct that is from beautifying the mitzvah, that we're not content with just fulfilling the mitzvah as ordained by the law, but we want to make it more beautiful. Like, for me, it would be lighting the beautiful candles for Shabbos. So it says that there's a third type of conduct that comes with this quality of what we call Mesiras Nefesh, this self-sacrifice that transcends even the level of beautifying the mitzvah. So how is it? What does that mean? It means that when you beautify a mitzvah, you're doing something that wasn't required for the mitzvah, but you're delighting in the mitzvah and you want to make it more special, more beautiful. Like when you have a house guest, you could either like throw their blankets on the bed and say, here, make your own bed. Or you can make their bed, you can make their room so beautiful. I know that as a house guest, I've gone to people's houses where you just feel so like treasured as a guest. The room is made up so beautifully, and you know, there's little details. Like there are people I go to in Laguna, and they put like little chocolates on my pillow, and you know, hand creams, and you know, it just that beautifying the mitzvah in some way to make it a little more special. And it says the person does the mitzvah with love and enthusiasm, and they seek ways to adorn it that aren't obligated by law. So there's an analogy of a servant carrying out the order of the king. If the servant lacks the love and enthusiasm for what they're doing, they will only do as much as they have to do. They will not exert themselves to beautify the act because they lack this feeling of love. But if the king and if the work is precious to that person, they will be enthusiastic about it and will do all kinds of things to adorn it and make it more beautiful. But it says that this level of Mesiras Nefesh is superior to the beautifying of the mitzvah because it implies that that person and God are no longer separate, that they're not doing what they're doing as an independent person, but their very being is to fulfill the will of God. Am I fulfilling the will of God? How can I fulfill the will of God? That the person is not interested in themselves per se, but their sole concern is doing what they're supposed to be doing without thought, without calculations. So it says that this level is totally devoid of self-interest. And it says, and then when that happens in the mitzvah, there's a reciprocal quality of measure for measure where God acts in that same way. So it says that when a person has boundless devotion to God, it calls forth God's boundless devotion to them. And it says on Hanukkah, the Jewish people were in this state of Mesiras Nefesh, and they merited the miracle with this flask of oil, which showed God's love of Israel. And it says that God was able to go beyond the physical because they were able to go beyond the physical. And it says that the conduct of this love or this devotion to God brings forth in us a readiness for Mesiras Nefesh. And it is a universal character trait of Jews, of all people of Israel. It says every Jew, this is from the book of Tanya, that every Jew possesses a desire to unite with their source, which is God. But sometimes this desire or love of godliness is veiled over and covered by the mundaneness of how a person is living their life, or it's dormant. And it does not exercise its influence as long as a person is preoccupied with mundane pursuits. And sometimes when a Jew is confronted with a test in the matter of faith to their very soul, this love is aroused from its sleep and it exerts its influence. And it says that in many cases, God forbid this should ever happen again to anybody, but many, many people who sacrificed their lives for the sanctity of God's name and suffered harsh tortures and martyrdom because they could not deny their Jewishness. It's not that they couldn't do it. That I know that I remember I had a teacher in Brooklyn, and he was from Russia originally, and he was saying that we know that there is a halakha, Jewish law says that if your life is in danger, you can do anything to save your life. And that there were Russian prisoners that were in these horrible conditions in Russia, and their life could have been saved by the non-kosher food that they were fed. But they couldn't, even though they were obligated to save their life. It wasn't like, oh, you have a choice. No, the obligation is that they should have saved their life, but they couldn't do it, that they couldn't bring themselves. They couldn't bring themselves to go against that essential part of themselves. And sometimes it takes these situations to put a person in that place. And we hope that it will never happen again for anybody. So I want to do another little piece before I tell you an amazing story. I might do two little pieces. This is from Yehuda Golevsky, who I was talking about before. I'm going to give you some of her thoughts on Hanukkah. So she's talking about the difference between the school of Hillel and the school of Shammai. So there's in Torah, for anybody who has studied, and I'm going to just simplify it for those who haven't, there's the school of Hillel and the school of Shammai. And the school of Shammai represents potential, and the school of Hillel represents reality. And it says that they were different in all kinds of discussion in laws, and we follow Hillel, not because Hillel was more correct, but because Hillel's teachings were down to earth. And it says that when Mashiach comes, we're going to do things possibly in the path of Shammai. So Shammai says that we should start with 8 candles every night, and we should take 1 away. Hillel says that we should start with 1 candle and that we add every night. We add on 1. So it says that, and we go according to Hillel. So when we light the Hanukkah candles, we want the light to be drawn down, and we light the candles, we need heat to light up the candles. So it says all holy fires need God's light, which is the light of Torah, and that we're creating a vessel. So when we are lighting the Hanukkah menorah, we're creating a vessel, we're making a home for the light, for the candles, and we're creating a space to bring this light to. The candle or the oil will be the space to bring this light to. And when we sit by the candles, we are sitting by a higher light. We're not just sitting by this little fire that we see in front of us. We are actually sitting by the holiness. We're drawing down from the lights of Hanukkah. We're drawing down for what they represent and what they can add and give to us in our life. And even though the candle and the oil are physical, but we're creating something to hold spirituality. We're holding spirituality in that light. And we look at these candles and we gaze at them, and what do we see? They represent the temple menorah. So when we're gazing at our menorahs, we have, if you didn't light yet tonight, gaze. If tomorrow night, the last night of Hanukkah, which is a night, I just want to say, it's called Zos Hanukkah. It's a night for special blessings. It's a night to ask for any blessing that a person needs. Like it says, I was listening to a teaching, I don't remember all the details, but it was saying that the first ever nights we receive, and on the 8th night, we can ask, the gates are open to ask for anything that anybody needs, and in particular for families that have not been able to have children, that it's a special day to ask brachas for children. And I know that if anybody will need those blessings, that Bonei Olam, I think, one can look that up, and there's people that are going to go to all the holy places and pray for people who need to have children. So we gaze at these candles, and it says, because we're looking, the higher light, which we're really attaching to, this higher light needs a vessel, it needs a garment to express itself in. So the oil or the candle that we're lighting for Hanukkah is the garment to express this higher light. And so what happened is that the Greeks came and they tried to abolish this. They took from us our Torah. What were they really trying to take? They were trying to take our minds away from us. They were trying to co-opt the vessels of our minds and not letting truth into the world. That's, they wanted it to be false. They wanted it to have their touch. And it says that human intellect, they were championing human intellect, and we know that there is wisdom of the world. There is wisdom that we can use. There's physics, there's art, there's science that's infused with divine wisdom. Anatomy, things that are useful to understand and to help, safety and protection for people, and how people's lives can be better and healthier. But they can't be divorced from holiness. And there are a few subjects that it is impossible to immerse in study without being driven away from God. So it makes you feel like an outsider. So the Hanukkah struggle is the fact that this is a world that we don't see the hand of God in, but we need to see the hand of God. And that's why people love these stories. All these stories, and the next one I'm going to tell, are stories where you actually see the hand of God. You can't not see the hand of God in it. It's like God's, calling you up, just be outside your door at this and this date, and this miracle is just going to happen for you right there. Like we have to open our eyes and understand that for everybody, this is going on all the time. So we live in an active universe today, and this story takes place currently. The Hanukkah miracle takes place currently. The fact that we have people that live Jewish lives devoted to serving God and devoted to bringing more holiness and devoting to live lives of holiness and sanctity in a world where every advertisement is telling you to do something different. It's telling you to be something different. People don't even know who they are, what they are, So we're living in a world that's trying to pull us away from that, just like the Greeks try to pull us away from that. And we have this miracle of light, of holiness, of creating vessels to contain the holiness of light. So it says that we are not commemorating, again, we talked about this before, something that was. We are immersing our minds in thoughts and holiness. And as we sit by the fire and we look at the fire. Okay, I want to skip this. Okay. So, it says the days of Hanukkah were established to give thanks and praise, that we need to have genuine gratitude. That it says when things were terrible, what happened in those times? We had to bring a Thanksgiving offering. It says we say this special prayer of Gomel, where Thanksgiving for recovering from a sickness, crossing a sea, people rescued from prison, from difficult experiences. We have to have real gratitude, and we have to fill speech with the light of truth. And we draw from knowing in the future, we will see how everything was right in our life in the Messianic time. We're working towards this. So Hanukkah, we try to be as happy as we can be, have one more donut, grateful. We might not be able to have a donut for the whole year, so enjoy it now. Grateful, we live, enjoy it. We have to bring joy. You know, if you're happy, if you're just a normally happy person and everything's going well, there's not a challenge to joy. But we know, and it's again in Tanya, that a Jew can contain joy in one part of their heart and weeping in another. And there's always possibility. That's the game of dreidel. The dreidel, you know, it's interesting, the dreidel game, and there's so much on dreidel, which we're not going into. I did not have one dreidel game this Hanukkah. Usually I have my grandchildren and my friends' grandchildren's over and something. We played dreidel, but this year, no dreidel game. And it came out of the 4 different exiles. So it says we fill our lamps, the Hanukkah lamps, with oil. We light near the entry. What's the entry of a person? The entry of a person is your mouth. So we want to have truth coming out of our mouths. And then when this light is shining brightly, it has the ability to even relieve our suffering. So the Zohar says that it's a place of rest, and we draw Hanukkah lights, gives us this place of rest and peace, and we should be happy. So we're going to be happy. So there's a beautiful teaching I also learned from Rabbi Dr. Jonathan Sachs, who, sad, like all these great teachers and holy people, is not in the world, but there's so much of his teaching that still is. That is really quite remarkable. And I don't think we're going to do any of the part. We're not going to do the Parsha today. I did prepare the Parsha, but we're not going to do it. But if you go on Covenant, what's it called? I'll tell you. You can get his Covenant and Conversation. If you go on the computer and you go on Covenant and Conversation, he gives these beautiful teachings on the Parsha. So I suggest it. So one of the things he said, he asked this question, that it says that, and this comes from the Rambam. The Rambam asks that if a person only has enough money to buy lights, or has no money, a person who lacks money to buy lights for Hanukkah should sell something or borrow so as to be able to fulfill the mitzvah of lighting the Hanukkah light. What if on Friday afternoon the person finds they only have one candle? Do they light it as a Shabbos candle, or do they light it as a Hanukkah candle? Because it can't do 2 jobs. It can't be both. So the Jewish law says you light it as a Shabbos candle. And the Rambam says that Shabbos light, this is so beautiful, has the priority because it symbolizes Shalom Bayit, which means domestic peace in the home. And it says great is peace because the entire Torah was given to make peace in the world. Hanukkah commemorates one of the greatest military victories in Jewish history. Yet Jewish law rules if you only have one candle and you can't get another candle before Shabbos, it should be lit for Shabbos and not for Hanukkah, because the greatest military victory takes second place to peace in the home. And one of the reasons why Judaism has survived, because it values the home more than the battlefield, and marriage more than military grandeur, and children more than generals. This is from Jonathan Sachs. It says, the real victory of Hanukkah was spiritual. And we value these things. We value the things that are real and of significance. And that's why if one Jewish law would come to say, if one would have one candle, that it should be used for Shabbos. So, okay, I can't really resist. I'm just going to go on and I have one more teaching I want to do. I have like 18, but I'm only going to do one. And then I'm going to tell a very moving story that I've heard many times over, even from the person who told the story personally. So this is from Rabbi Raskin, who is a rabbi in Brooklyn, and he says that Hanukkah, each holiday has a little theme. Like Passover is that represents the Passover, Sukkot is to sit in booths, and Hanukkah represents to rest. And we just had a big war, and now everyone's resting. It's time to rest. It's time to sit back and rest. So the Alter Rebbe says that every word that makes up the letters of the holiday, or the letters of something that you're teaching, a word that you're speaking, it says all the letters of are the DNA of the word. And the first letter, of course, is certainly contains within it all the others and is most important. And in these letters is the theme of what the word means. So we're talking about the word Hanukkah. So the first letter is a ches, and every letter has a numerical value and a meaning and a theme. So the letter ches equals 8. So there's an obvious connection. We know the 8 lights. What's the meaning? The meaning is cherut, which means freedom. On this holiday, we became free. We became free from being oppressed. And it also begins the phrase, the fear of God was on the mountain. And which mountain was it? It was the mountain where the temple now should stand, but did stand. And it has a design. So the design of the ches, this is according to the Holy Arizal, who is buried in Sfat. And every summer, I spend every day going to the Arizal, and I really feel the lack of having been there this year. According to the Rizal, it's made up of 3 different signs. There's a Vav, a Zion, and what's called a Chatat Terrace, which is also called a camel's hump. It's an upside down V shape that's above the Vav and the Zion. So in Hanukkah, there were 3 miracles. One was the victory of the war, and that's connected to the 24th of Kislev. One was when they found the cruse of oil. That's connected to the day Hanukkah begins, the 25th of Kislev. And that the oil lasted 8 days is connected to the 26th of Kislev. So the miracle of winning the war is called a salvation. We defeated them, and even though the miracle was from God, we participated in the miracle, and therefore it's called a salvation. The wondrous, something that is called wondrous, it says that in the Jews finding the one cruse of oil with the seal of the high priest, it's true that they found it and it was called wondrous because really the Greeks overlooked it. It wasn't, it didn't come from nowhere. The Greeks happened not to have seen that one bottle to define. So that represents the beginning of Hanukkah, the 25th day of Hanukkah. The salvations are connected to 24th of Kislev, and the 26th of Kislev is the great miracle. What's the great miracle? That the oil lasted 8 days totally, but that was a miracle from God, and it had nothing to do with us. So the first day, the winning of the war, even though it was from the hand of God, the people fought the war. The second day was called wondrous. The 25th is called wondrous because and not miraculous, because the Greeks did overlook this cruse of oil. But on the 26th of Kislev, when the oil burnt for 8 days, that was totally miraculous. It had nothing to do with the human touch at all. And it says the dates have a meaning also. 24 of Kislev equals the 24 letters in the verse, blessed be his name forever and ever. The 25th of Kislev represents, which is the day they found the cruse of oil, represents the 25 letters in Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And the 26th of Kislev, when the oil burned miraculously for 8 days, represents God's holy name, the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey. And there were 3 different levels of miracles. When we say Baruch Shem Kavod Malkuto Le'olam Vo'ed, that's called a lower level of unity. And we can see it through nature. The Shema Yisrael is called a high level of unity, where we say there's only God. So the world is God and the world is nullified to God. And the 26th of Kislev represents the divine name of God, and it goes beyond, it's the name that goes beyond time and space, and it's holy and it's separate from creation. And all of these three levels are found in the graphic design of the Ches, which is the first letter of the word Hanukkah. There's a Vav on the right side, which represents the 6 days of nature, the work week. The 6 days of nature, we get involved in doing our work, and it alludes to the miracle of the war we participated in. Even though God had a major part in the war, we still participated in it. It still was in the natural means. So that represents the lower unity of God. This, in the word ches, this is all the design of the letter ches. So the vav is to the right, the zion is to the left, and that represents the 7th day of the week, which is Shabbos, which is beyond nature. It's a Shabbos to God, and what do we know about Shabbos? That if you prepare before Shabbos, you eat on Shabbos. We're not doing anything. Shabbos comes, to eat on Shabbos is an outgrowth of our work of the week. So it alludes to the wonders, winning the war, but it was above that. The Shema means God is one, Shema Yisrael. And Talmud says we should meditate on the words God is one, and one who meditates on these words, this is from the Talmud, is blessed with long life. So what is the meaning of the word echad, one? So it says that the ches, we have the daled, which represents, well, it's the aleph, the ches, and the daled. So we'll start with the daled. The daled represents the 4 corners of the universe. The ches, which is the number 8, represents the 7 heavens and 1 world. And the aleph represents the creator and master of the universe, God. So, and it says this upside down V is like an arrow pointing upward to God. And it goes beyond Shabbos and it goes beyond the 6 days. And it says that the candle that was burning for the 8 days alludes to the miracle of all of these 3 aspects of the letter Ches, which starts the word Hanukkah. So it says that the oil lasted for 8 days, and also the meaning of the word Ches is connected to freedom. We were freed from the Syrian and Greek armies. And the design is above, we see nature in the design and we see above nature. So it was wondrous to find the cruse of oil, but it was miraculous that the oil burned for 8 days. And here is really one of the points of this whole teaching that I thought was really, really quite special. That it's within nature itself that we see God. That the breaking of the nature, the 8 days that the oil burnt, the tremendous miracles that might happen, that's one level. But it says that to find God in everyday life, to find God in how you live your life, how you get up in the morning, how you have a beautiful home, you have food, you have friends, you have family, whatever it is, to find it in that, not just the miraculous, oh, it burned for 8 days and that's miraculous. That it's very important that Hanukkah represents not only this level of the miraculous, not only this, but the level of being able to appreciate that the wonder of our normal life, our daily life. So I think I'm going to just end there, and I'm just going to end with a story. And then I want to read a poem by Rabbi Cook. So this story is really quite Oh, Elaine, hi. L'chaim. So this story is really quite beautiful and miraculous. And I heard it actually from Rabbi Moshe Brisky from Chabad of Agora. And so here's the story. And it's a Hanukkah story. So Rosh Hashanah, Rabbi Brisky in Agora has a very big program for Rosh Hashanah. His community and many other communities, it really is a nice service for people who don't want to be at home or don't want to walk back and forth to shul on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. He has many, many people, and they go to a hotel. And because there's so many people means that there's a lot of children. And he brings out a lot of bakrim, meaning boys, yeshiva boys from New York, to help with the program. So between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, they stay in Agora, so they don't fly back and forth to New York. And for Shabbos, they were staying at the home of a member of the community of Rabbi Brisky. So it was Shabbos day, and after davening, after the prayers, morning prayers, they go back to this person's house. And they're going into the house, and they see that the house next door has a moving truck in front of it, and the moving truck says, "A nice Jewish boys." Now, I actually use that moving company. Maybe that's why I like this. Well, the story's great, but I use that moving company. So I use those nice Jewish boys when I moved from Westwood to Mar Vista. So they see it and they go, and so immediately, they see nice Jewish boys. And as he tells the story, what do they see when they see nice Jewish boys? They're not saying, oh, these nice Jewish boys are working on Shabbos. They say, no, they see an opportunity to reach out to them. So they go over and they're Israeli, of course, and they say, come on, it's Shabbos, we're going to have Kiddush, we're going to have a little mashka, we're going to have, sure, well, come on over. Okay, so they come over. So they're all there, and it's after lunch, and Rabbi Brisky also walks over, and all of a sudden one of the nice Jewish boys, they say, oh no, our person is coming. He just pulled up to the house. So, and we're drinking on the job, whatever. So one of the young men says, "Don't worry, I'll go over there. I'm going to invite him over." So he goes over. This man gets out of his car with his daughter, and immediately this yeshiva boy says to him, "Welcome to Agora." And he goes, "What?" And he says, "Welcome." And he says, "Are you Jewish?" And he says, "Actually, yes." And he says, "Well, we're having Shabbos, right next door, and we want to invite you to come with your movers. We want you to come and have a little, greet us, say a little l'chaim, and we want to greet you." And he says, "Not only am I Jewish, but I'm a music director at a Reformed temple." And he says, "Great, maybe you can come teach us some Shabbos songs," not saying, oh, he's not going to be interested, but another opportunity. Let's get him over singing Shabbos songs. So he comes over. They all have a great day. They're singing and they're having eating. And anyway, and by the time Shabbos is over, that's when the movers start to move all his stuff. And that's it. And, so the next day or a few days later, Rabbi Brisky finds a note under his door. And it says something to the effect of, you don't know, but you are the hand of God. Something like that. You're the hand of God. And it's his phone number on it. So he's intrigued and he calls this man. And the man says, you don't know what this did for me. And he tells him that he was moving in and he wasn't so sure if Agora was the right move. So before he was driving over, because all his stuff was being moved, he said he asked God to show him a sign that moving to Agora was the right place for him, was the right move for him. And as soon as he arrives in Agora, somebody says, welcome to Agora, and are you Jewish? And come sing some Shabbos songs with us. So he says, I guess you were the hand of God. So then he started to come to some classes and, come around the Chabad. And he had his daughter, he had this 8-year-old daughter, but she wasn't always there with him. She lived with her mother also. So Rabbi Brisky teaches a special class. Besides the classes he teaches occasionally a class called Faith and Suffering. He said it's a very intense class, a very heavy class. And he was going to teach this class, Faith and Suffering, and this man, I think his name was Jack, comes to the class, and he's sitting in the front, and Rabbi Brisky sees him just weeping through the whole class, crying and weeping through the whole class. And when the class is over, he comes up to him, and he falls on his arms, and he's weeping, and Rabbi Brisky said, do you want to come to my office and talk? And he said, yes. And he comes to the office, and he says to him, you don't know my whole story, but he said a year ago, he said more than a year ago, but that he was married and he had 3 children. And 2 of his 3 children were in a car accident and they were killed. And the only child that was left was this young girl. And he said that he couldn't recover. He said he went into a very deep depression and that he lost his job, and then he lost his wife. His wife divorced him and took his daughter, and he just kept getting into deeper and deeper and darker places. And he decided that he was going to take his own life. So he called up his ex-wife, and he said he would like to take his daughter out to the movies. And he decided he was going to take his daughter out to the movies one last time. And that night he was going to kill himself when he came back. And he said that he picked her up and he took her to the Mountain Gate Mall in Simi Valley, and they were going to the movie theater. And he walks into the building, he walks into the mall, and he hears music, and he thinks that's odd. And then as he's walking towards the movie theaters in there, he sees a menorah, and he sees music and people dancing. And as he's walking to the movie, somebody grabs him and starts dancing with him and dancing with him and dancing and dancing and dancing and dancing and dancing. And he said that dancing changed him. And he said during that dancing around the menorah, he felt a small ray of hope and light, and that he made a decision that he was not going to take his life. And he said he took his daughter to the movie, he came home, he said he went for more therapy, he went for more help, he was able to get his job back, he was able to start to rebuild his life. And he decided that he wanted to move to a new community where he could start again, where he knew no one. He said, he didn't even pick Agora. He told his real estate agent to find me a nice place. Find me a place. And the real estate agent found Agora, and he picked Agora. And as he's telling this story, Rabbi Brisky says, 1 minute, and he turns around, and he goes over to his bookshelf, and he's looking for picture albums, and he takes down an album of Hanukkah, of different Hanukkah events, and he opens the album, and he looks through it, and he takes out a picture, and he and Jack are dancing, and he puts it on the table. And he tells him that every year, this was quite a while ago, before there was Chabad in Simi Valley and many other places. And he said every year, one of the nights of Hanukkah, he would pick a new place, a new city to go and do a public menorah lighting. So he decided that year they're going to go to Simi Valley. So where are they going to go? They're going to go to a mall. So he hires, a truck and balloons and a clown. And then they don't know anymore. They don't live in Simi Valley. Gora is maybe 40 minutes away from Simi Valley. So they call the operator and they said, we'd like the number of the mall. And she goes, what mall? And they go, the mall, the shopping mall. And they go, oh, Mountain Gate Shopping Center? And he goes, yeah, that one. And they get the number. And they call up and they say to the person who answers, we'd like to do this menorah celebration, a menorah lighting in your mall. And the woman says, are you sure? And he goes, no, we're sure. And again, she says, are you sure you want to do it in our mall? And he says, no. And she goes again, are you sure? And he goes, yeah. She goes, okay, fine. So he says, the night comes and they take the balloons and they take the clown and they take the music and they go to the mall. And when they get to the mall, he sees that the mall is closing, that there is not a store open. Every store is closed. And in fact, the mall, the only thing that's open in the mall is the movie theaters. And the mall is going to be demolished in a short amount of time. So they're there, and they think, okay, we're just going to set up in front of the movie theater. And he says, and he feels really foolish. And he says, he decides that whoever is going into that movie theater, he's going to dance with so he doesn't feel stupid. That at least he'll grab people going into the movie theater and he'll dance with them so they won't feel stupid. And he said, and he came home from that thinking, what a failure, what an evening of failure. That there was basically them and a handful of people. And that evening turned this man's life around. And what the details of the story, like the first story I told when the class first opened about the man in Alabama. It's like the hand of God picks you up and puts you where you need to be. And even though we might think that we belong somewhere else, just because we're in this place means that this is our place. And as we learned in the teaching of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, that we are all ambassadors. And what Hanukkah teaches us is that we have to light up the place that we have been given to be the ambassador in. And everybody has that ability to do it. So I want to end by reading this beautiful poem by Rabbi Avram Yitzhak Kook, the first chief rabbi of Israel. And it says, here is his poem. Everyone must know that deep within burns a candle. No one's candle is like someone else's. No one lacks a personal candle. We all must know that it is our task to reveal our light to the world, to ignite it until it is a great flame, and to illuminate the universe. So I just want to say happy Hanukkah to everybody. And I would really request if people could say a psalm and give extra tzedakah for Fega Sarah Bas Gittel and for Barak Ben Leah, that they should both have a complete healing. And unless Mashiach comes, which absolutely could happen, and even if Mashiach comes, we're going to have class next week. It'll just be, we'll all be in Jerusalem listening to the class live. So I want to thank everybody for coming. I want you to have a beautiful last day of Hanukkah. Remember, the last day of Hanukkah, the gates are wide open. Pray for everything you need and pray for each other. That really, that this holy light and sanctity fills the world, and that we can be united with our loved ones and really celebrate with those no weight gain donuts. Okay, so happy Hanukkah, everybody. Bye-bye.